Wonderful. So we've had two really compelling opening views, from putting a moral compass back at the heart of capitalism and working through capitalism to correct some of the problems capitalism has brought, and also removing some of the inherent blindness in the current flows of finance, and really, putting a contextual vision back into those flows of. If I turn to you, Professor Tim Jackson, in some ways asking you to give a headline answer to the question, what are the alternatives to capitalism that you propose, is a little harsh, in that you've written a whole book on post-growth life after capitalism. Before that, of course, a whole book on sort of seeding the macroeconomics of a post-growth economy. But I'm going to make it even more unfair by asking you not just to give us your headline proposal, but could you also give us a sense, in so doing, of the degree to which the life after capitalism and the post-growth economics that you describe in your books, to what degree do you see that as a desirable endpoint in its own right anyway? And to what degree is it a sort of way of reconciling ourselves with something that's going to be happening to us anyway?
Oh, I like that question. I like it much more than me telling you what life is going to be like after capitalism. I mean, what I tried to do in post-growth was, and particularly in the life after capitalism bit of it, was to sort of unpack the bits of capitalism that go wrong. And I think, there are a couple of obvious things. One is actually in the root of the word capital itself, which comes from capita, which is about counting sheep. Capitalism spends too much time counting stuff and not enough time on the poetry of life. And the other thing it kind of does is it spends too much time on kit, on technology, on building stuff, on physical resources. And that brings us into a mindset where we think that the good life is all about having and owning more and more stuff, because that's what capitalism does quite well. And that too is a bit of a mistake. So it kind of, in a way, life after capitalism is we don't count so much, or we don't counting as much as we do. We think poetically a little bit more. And number two is we just value our relationships a little bit more than we do all the stuff that capitalism is very, very good at producing. So, and to me, that's a desirable place to be. It's more poetic, more creative, it's more lively, it's more relational, it has more time for our friends and our family, it has the ability to develop human skills, it has the space for us to do nothing, absolutely nothing, when it seems like the right thing to do, and it has the ability to be a richer, more fulfilling life. I see it kind of life after capitalism. I see capitalism. I'm not against Steven Pinker thinking that capitalism has delivered lots of good things. We have to accept that's where we are. We are, in fact, in Western countries, very, very privileged, and we've got kind of material comforts until we don't even know what to do with discomfort because we're so used to being comfortable. And yet, somehow, we know that model is not very good for the planet. And ultimately, it's not that good for us either. So I do see after capitalism as being a place which is, richer in lots of different ways. Not necessarily monetary richer, but very definitely poetically richer, very definitely relationships are richer, very definitely our sense of meaning and purpose is an expandable commodity that has no limits whatsoever, that's not limited by the finite limits of the planet, and therefore is something really worth pursuing as a vision of social progress. And our job, kind of in getting there, it seems to me, is to sort of reform all of the things that we take for granted about our economic system, including, as Danielle has very eloquently said, the system of investment. I mean, I think that's when in Prosperity Without Growth, I kind of put forward this idea, which I'm just delivering really in a way to test Daniella's response to it, and Sir Tim's, of course, and it's this idea that actually investment, which we've seen as kind of just building up physical structures or making people richer or improving our technology, that investment is actually something much more fundamental than that. Investment is really the commitment of the present to the future. And I think that idea of investment as commitment is one way of doing exactly what I'm suggesting. We reach into economics, we look at all the dysfunctional bits, we take them out, we explore why they're dysfunctional, and we say, what should they be doing? Investment should not be a gambling casino. It should be our commitment to the future of our families, our children, of the safety of the planet, of the world that we live in, of other people. It's a commitment to the future. And as such, the kinds of work that those at the vanguard of sustainable investment, ESG, are doing is absolutely essential. But we have to sort of take that a little bit deeper. I think we have to take that lesson a little bit deeper and ask, how is it that we can create that commitment? How is it that we can protect that commitment? How is it that we can stop investment becoming a kind of winner takes all situation in which only the rich benefit from it? How can we invest in work? How can we invest in the labor of ordinary people? How can we invest in the relationships that matter? And in particular, I think at this time, how can we invest in a health service that doesn't leave its workers living in precarious livelihoods with insecure wages and impossible productivity targets? Because that's the biggest lesson of the last year, I think, that we face at the moment, that capitalism in all its forms, in all its forgetting of poetry, in all its forgetting of relationships, privileged the ownership of capital over the ordinary work that saved our lives. And that's a huge challenge, but I think that's where we are.